Sprint: How to Solve Big Problems and Test New Ideas in Just 5 Days, by Jake Knapp, John Zeratsky, and Braden Kowitz. Introduction. Imagine for a moment, it's a quiet morning in a hotel. You're a guest, and you've just realized you forgot your toothbrush. You call the front desk, and a few minutes later, you hear a soft whirring sound outside your door. You open it, and there, standing silently, is a 3-foot-tall, glossy white robot. Its lid smoothly opens, presenting your toothbrush. It emits a few friendly beeps, and when you give it a 5-star rating on its little touchscreen face, it does a happy little dance before gliding away down the hall. Do you feel delighted? Or do you feel unsettled? Maybe even a little creeped out? This was not a scene from a science fiction movie. This was a real question facing a real startup called Savio back in 2014. They had built this incredible delivery robot, but they were wrestling with a huge make-or-break problem. How should a machine behave around people? If they got it wrong, their entire business could fail before it even started. They had weeks, not months, to figure it out. Now, in the normal world, a problem like this would trigger endless meetings, debates, maybe months of slow, expensive development, all based on a guess. But Savio didn't have that kind of time. Instead, they used a secret weapon. A process developed inside the walls of Google, a kind of time machine that allowed them to jump into the future and see how customers would react to their finished product before they'd even truly built it. This process is called the sprint. And it's the brainchild of a man named Jake Knapp. While working at Google, he grew tired of the way big ideas were handled. He saw the inefficiency of traditional brainstorming, where the loudest voice often wins and good ideas get lost in the noise. He knew there had to be a better way. So he began experimenting, mixing together the best parts of business strategy, behavioral science, and design thinking into a focused, 5-day recipe for solving tough problems. When he took this process to Google Ventures, the investment arm of Google, he and his partners, John Zeratsky and Braden Kowitz, refined it into a powerful formula they've now run with over 100 companies, from coffee brewers to cancer researchers. The book we're diving into today, Sprint, is the playbook for that formula. And I want to make you a promise. By the end of our time together, you won't just understand this 5-day process. You will hold a key. A key to unlocking your own big ideas, to cutting through uncertainty, and to making incredible progress on the things that matter most to you, in a fraction of the time you thought possible. This isn't just a method for startups in Silicon Valley. It's a way of thinking that can change how you approach any meaningful challenge in your life. So, let's begin the countdown. Book summary. Every great project, every brilliant idea, starts with a spark of excitement. But what happens after that spark? Too often, it gets lost in a fog of uncertainty. We get stuck. We fall into what the author calls the churn, endless email chains, meetings that go nowhere, and long-term projects built on shaky assumptions. We spend months, sometimes years, working on something, only to launch it and find out nobody cares. It's a heartbreaking, expensive, and all too common story. The traditional way we try to solve this is with brainstorming. We get a bunch of smart people in a room, cover the walls with sticky notes, and hope for magic. But the author discovered a hard truth. Group brainstorming is mostly a feel-good exercise. The best ideas rarely come from a chaotic shout-out session. They come from individuals, given the time and focus to think deeply. But individuals working alone can also get stuck, procrastinating or overthinking the problem. So the question became, how can you get the focused magic of individual work, combined with the alignment and energy of a team, all directed at solving the right problem, fast? The answer is the sprint. It's a 5-day process for answering critical business questions through design, prototyping, and testing ideas with customers. It's not a magic trick, it's a recipe. A carefully structured, step-by-step guide that compresses months of work into a single week. Think of it as a superpower for your team. It allows you to fast forward into the future and see your finished product and customer reactions before making any expensive commitments. And to pull it off, you first need to set the stage. This isn't about just grabbing a few coworkers and a conference room. A successful sprint needs 3 things before it even begins: the right challenge, the right team, and the right environment. First, the challenge. The author is very clear on this: don't waste a sprint on a small problem. A sprint requires a huge amount of energy and focus. You need to aim it at your most important work. They call these high-stakes challenges. Maybe you're launching a new product that will cost a fortune to build. Maybe you're up against a tight deadline and need a solution, fast. Or maybe you're just plain stuck, losing momentum on a project that truly matters. The bigger the challenge, the better the sprint. Next, you need the right team. This is where the author borrows an idea from heist movies, like Ocean's 11. You need to assemble a small, diverse crew with all the skills you need to pull off the job. The ideal size is 7 people or fewer. Any more than that, and things start to slow down. And on this team, a few roles are absolutely critical. Most important is the decider. This is the person with the authority to make the final call: a CEO, a project lead, a department head. Without a decider in the room, or at least a delegate they've officially empowered, any decisions you make during the week simply won't stick. This was a lesson the author learned the hard way, after a failed sprint where the team's great work was rejected by a manager who wasn't involved. You also need a facilitator. This person is the guide for the week. They manage the time, the conversations, and the overall process. They keep everyone on track so the team can focus purely on the problem. And then you fill out the rest of the crew with a mix of experts: someone who understands the finances, someone who knows marketing, someone who talks to customers every day, someone who knows what's technically possible, and someone who designs the product. This diversity is crucial, because the best ideas often come from the intersections of these different perspectives. Finally, you need the right time and space. The sprint requires a commitment of 5 full days. Monday through Thursday typically run from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., with Friday starting a bit earlier. These aren't grueling 12-hour days. The intensity of the sprint comes from its focus, not its hours. To protect that focus, you create a sanctuary. You book a single room for the entire week, one with at least 2 big whiteboards. These whiteboards aren't just for doodling. They become the team's shared brain, a physical space where all the information lives, visible to everyone at all times. And there's one simple, powerful, and sometimes difficult rule for this sanctuary: a strict no-device policy. Laptops, phones, iPads, they all have to be put away. A quick glance at an email can pull someone's attention out of the room for minutes, breaking the team's flow. Of course, you're not completely cut off. You can step out during the frequent breaks to check on the outside world. This rule creates a bubble of pure, uninterrupted focus that is almost impossible to find in modern work life. With the challenge set, the team assembled, and the sanctuary prepared, the clock starts. 5 days to go from a big problem to a real answer. Monday is all about building the map. Before you can find a solution, you have to agree on the problem. Monday's structured discussions are designed to get the entire team aligned. The day begins with an exercise the author calls Start at the End. The facilitator asks the team a simple but profound question: why are we doing this project? Where do we want to be 6 months or a year from now? This isn't a vague mission statement. It's a concrete, optimistic vision for the future. For Blue Bottle Coffee, a specialty coffee company wanting to sell their beans online, the goal wasn't just sell more coffee. It was to bring a great coffee experience to new customers online, a goal that reflected their commitment to quality and hospitality. This long-term goal gets written at the top of a whiteboard and stays there all week, like a North Star. Then, you flip the script. You get pessimistic. You ask the team, imagine we travel a year into the future and this project was a total disaster. What went wrong? This exercise is brilliant. It surfaces all the hidden assumptions and fears lurking beneath the surface. For the Savio robot team, a fear was that guests would find the robot awkward or confusing. By turning these fears into questions, like, will guests find the robot awkward? You create a checklist of the most important risks you need to address. With the destination and the dangers identified, it's time to draw the map. This isn't a complex technical diagram. It's a simple, customer-centric story. On the left side of the whiteboard, you list the key actors, the different types of customers or users. On the right, you write the end of the story, the successful outcome. And in the middle, you draw the handful of key steps that connect the beginning to the end. For Savio, the actors were the guest, the front desk, the robot, and even a bystander in the hallway. The story ended with a successful delivery. The map showed how a guest calls the desk, the staff puts an item in the robot, and the robot navigates the lobby, elevator, and hallway to reach the guest's door. This simple map creates a shared understanding of the entire customer experience. The afternoon is spent refining this map by interviewing the experts on your team and from around your company. This is where you tap into that distributed knowledge. The person who knows the business strategy, the one who talks to customers every day, the engineer who knows how it all works, each gets a turn to share what they know, and the team updates the map as they learn. While this happens, the team is doing something very specific. They're not just listening, they are capturing insights on sticky notes using a technique called How Might We? Instead of writing down problems like, customers don't trust us, you reframe it as an optimistic question, how might we build trust with new customers? This subtle shift in language turns problems into opportunities and becomes fuel for the next day's solutions. By the end of Monday, the walls are covered. You have a long-term goal, a list of your biggest questions, a map of the challenge, and a collection of how might we opportunities. The final, critical job of the day is for the decider to pick a target. You can't solve the entire problem in 1 week. You have to choose one target customer and one critical moment on the map to focus on. For Savio, the target was the guest at the moment of delivery. For Blue Bottle, it was the new customer at the moment of choosing beans. This decision provides razor-sharp focus for the rest of the week. Monday isn't about solving anything. It's about creating a shared brain and a clear target. Tuesday is the day for solutions. Now that the team is focused on a specific target, it's time to generate ideas. But this isn't the messy, shout-over-each-other brainstorming that the author dislikes. Instead, Tuesday is a day of focused, individual work, following a philosophy of work alone, together. The morning starts with inspiration. In an exercise called Lightning Demos, each person on the team takes 3 minutes to share a great solution they've seen somewhere else. The key is to look for inspiration outside your own industry. A team building medical software might look at how airlines let you customize flight notifications. Blue Bottle Coffee, trying to figure out how to describe their complex coffee beans, found inspiration in how a high-end chocolate company described its flavors, simple, evocative notes like rich, chocolatey, comforting. These demos aren't about copying competitors, they're about collecting interesting components you can remix and improve upon. The facilitator captures these big ideas with quick drawings on the whiteboard, creating a palette of inspiration for the afternoon. After lunch, the real sketching begins. And this is where many people get nervous. "But I can't draw," is a common refrain. The author has a simple, reassuring message: it doesn't matter. A sprint sketch isn't about artistic talent. It's about turning an abstract idea into a concrete solution. All you need is the ability to write words and draw boxes and stick figures. To make it less intimidating, the sketching is broken down into a 4-step process. First, for 20 minutes, everyone silently walks around the room and takes notes on the goal, the map, the how might we questions, and the lightning demos from the morning. This is like booting up your brain. Second, for another 20 minutes, everyone jots down rough ideas, doodles, diagrams, sample headlines, just getting thoughts onto paper in a messy, private way. Third comes a fast-paced exercise called Crazy Eights. Each person takes a sheet of paper, folds it into 8 panels, and then has just 8 minutes, 1 minute per panel, to sketch 8 different variations of their strongest idea. The pace is frantic, and that's the point. It forces you to push past your first, most obvious solution and explore alternatives. Finally, everyone takes 30 minutes or more for the main event, the solution sketch. This is a detailed 3-panel storyboard of their best idea. It has to be self-explanatory, anonymous, and have a catchy title. The focus is on the quality of the solution, not the quality of the drawing. Bayard Duncan, the communications manager at Blue Bottle who claimed he couldn't draw, sketched a solution he called the Mind Reader. It organized the website based on how a barista talks to a customer, asking how do you make coffee at home, before recommending beans. It was just boxes and text, but it was a brilliant, thoughtful solution. By the end of Tuesday, you have a pile of these concrete, competing solutions, each one a well-thought-out hypothesis for how to solve the problem. And because everyone worked in parallel, you've avoided the pitfalls of groupthink entirely. Wednesday is decision day. You arrive on Wednesday morning to a stack of detailed, anonymous solution sketches. You can't prototype and test them all. You need to choose. This could easily devolve into hours of circular debate. To avoid this, the author created a 5-step process they call the sticky decision. It's unnatural, but incredibly efficient. First, you create an art museum. All the solution sketches are taped to the wall, like paintings in a gallery. Second, the team reviews them in silence during the heat map exercise. Everyone gets a sheet of small dot stickers and walks around the room, placing dots next to any part of any sketch they find interesting. There's no discussion. After a few minutes, clusters of dots start to appear, creating a heat map of the most compelling ideas, completely independent of who created them or who is best at pitching. Third comes the speed critique. The team gathers in front of each sketch, and the facilitator quickly narrates what it's about and points out the areas with a lot of heat. The team then spends just 3 minutes discussing the highlights. The person who drew the sketch stays silent until the very end, only speaking up to clarify anything the group missed. This prevents them from defensively selling their idea and allows the solution to stand on its own merits. Fourth is the straw poll. After all the sketches have been critiqued, everyone gets one large dot sticker and silently votes for the solution they believe is the best. This is a non-binding vote, meant to give the decider a sense of the team's opinion. Finally, it's time for the supervote. The decider is given 3 special dot stickers, often with their initials on them. They alone make the final, binding decision. They can choose to follow the straw poll, or they can go in a completely different direction. Whatever they put their supervotes on is what the team will prototype. This process honors the team's collective wisdom while respecting the decider's authority and responsibility. It's a structured way to get the best of both worlds. But what happens if the decider picks 2 great ideas that completely conflict with each other? This happened in Slack's sprint. One winning idea was a straightforward guided tour of the product. The other was a more playful idea where a new user would interact with a team of bots. They couldn't be combined. This is where the author introduces the rumble. When you have 2 strong, competing solutions, you don't have to choose. You can prototype both and test them head-to-head on Friday. It's like a wrestling match for ideas. You get to see which one performs better with real customers. With the winning solutions chosen, the afternoon is spent creating a storyboard. This is the step-by-step plan for the prototype. The team takes the winning sketches and weaves them together into a detailed, 10 to 15 panel story. It starts with how a customer first discovers the product, maybe through a web search or a news article, and walks through every click and interaction. This storyboard forces the team to fill in all the gaps and make all the small decisions before they start building, which saves a huge amount of time on Thursday. By the end of Wednesday, the hardest decisions are behind you. You have a solid plan. Thursday is the day to fake it. With just 1 day to build your prototype, you have to adopt what the author calls the prototype mindset. A prototype is not a finished product. It's a facade. It's like a Hollywood movie set of an old West town. From the front, it looks completely real, but behind it, there's nothing. The goal is to create something of Goldilocks quality, not too flimsy that it breaks the illusion, but not so high quality that you spend all night perfecting it. It needs to be just real enough to get an honest reaction from a customer. This means you can't use your normal tools, which are often optimized for perfection and quality. Instead, you use tools optimized for speed. For digital products like websites or apps, the author's surprising tool of choice is presentation software like Keynote or PowerPoint. You can build a series of slides that look and feel just like a real app, complete with clickable hotspots. For the FitStar fitness app Sprint, the team even filmed short videos of themselves doing exercises and dropped them into the Keynote slides to simulate the full experience. For a physical product, you might 3D print a model or modify an existing one. For a service, you might write a script and have your team act out the roles. The team at One Medical, exploring a new family clinic, prototyped the entire experience by rearranging an existing clinic for one evening and having their staff play their parts with real families. The mindset is always the same. You can prototype anything if you're willing to find a clever shortcut. To get it all done in one day, the team uses a divide-and-conquer strategy. Roles are assigned: makers who create the individual pieces of the prototype, a writer who crafts all the text, asset collectors who find images and icons, and a stitcher who is responsible for pulling all the pieces together into a seamless whole. There's also the interviewer, who spends Thursday writing the script for Friday's customer interviews, staying separate from the prototype creation so they remain unbiased. Around 3 p.m., the team does a trial run, walking through the entire prototype to catch any mistakes. By the end of the day, you have something that looks and feels real, ready for its moment of truth. Friday is for learning. This is the day the entire week has been building toward. It's when you get that glimpse into the future. The setup is simple. The interviewer meets with 5 target customers, one at a time, for a 1-hour interview. In another room, the rest of the Sprint team watches a live video feed, taking notes. You might be wondering, only 5 customers? Is that enough? The author points to the groundbreaking research of Jacob Nielsen, a usability expert who discovered that with just 5 users, you can identify about 85% of the major usability problems in a product. After 5, you start seeing the same patterns over and over. You're not looking for statistical certainty, you're looking for the big, glaring patterns. And 5 is the magic number to find them. The interview itself is a carefully structured, 5-act conversation. It starts with a friendly welcome to put the customer at ease. Then, a series of context questions to understand their world. Then, the prototype is introduced, with a key instruction for the customer to think aloud as they use it. The interviewer then gives them a broad task, not a series of specific instructions, and watches them navigate the prototype on their own. The interview wraps up with a quick debrief to capture their overall impressions. In the sprint room, the team is capturing every observation, positive, negative, and neutral, on colored sticky notes. At the end of each interview, the notes go up on a big grid on the whiteboard, organized by customer and by part of the prototype. As the day goes on, the patterns begin to emerge. By the 5th interview, they are often crystal clear. For the Slack team, it became obvious that the guided tour was a flawed success. People understood it but had some confusion, while the bot team idea was an efficient failure. People were mostly just bewildered by it. This one day of testing saved them months of engineering work on an idea that wouldn't have worked. The day ends with the team gathered around the whiteboard, looking at all the notes and identifying the patterns. You look back at the sprint questions you wrote on Monday and see which ones you've answered. You don't always get a runaway success. Sometimes you get a flawed success, where you know exactly what needs to be fixed. Sometimes you get an efficient failure, where you've learned a valuable lesson and can now confidently move in a different direction. But you can't lose. In just 5 days, you've gone from a big, daunting problem to a clear, data-driven answer about what to do next. You've closed the gap between a great idea and the real world. You've replaced endless debate with a small amount of powerful data. And that is the true magic of the sprint. Commentary. When you step back and look at the sprint process as a whole, what's truly remarkable is how it respects both the creativity of the individual and the collective wisdom of the team. It's a system designed for humans. It understands that we get distracted, that we have limited short-term memory, that we can be swayed by charisma, and that we often avoid the hard decisions. The entire 5-day structure is a brilliant workaround for our own human flaws. The most powerful lesson for me, and one that I think is deeply relevant today, is its relentless focus on replacing debate with data. Think about how much time in our lives, both in work and outside of it, is spent in abstract arguments. We debate what might work, what customers might want, what the best approach might be. A sprint provides a path to stop talking and start learning. The philosophy is simple. Let's build a quick facade of this idea and show it to real people. Their reaction will be more valuable than 1,000 hours of debate. This idea of the prototype mindset is something you can apply everywhere. It's about being willing to create a rough, temporary version of an idea to see how it feels in the real world. A student could prototype a career path by volunteering for a weekend. A writer could prototype a book by writing a single chapter and sharing it. It's a mindset of experimentation and learning, not of perfectionism and fear. So, how can you start applying this in your own life, right now? You don't have to run a full 5-day sprint. You can start small. First, the next time you're in a group trying to make a decision, try a miniature version of the sticky decision. Give everyone a moment to write down their own ideas silently on a piece of paper. Put them all up on a wall. Then, give everyone a few dot stickers to vote on the best ideas without any discussion. You'll be amazed at how quickly you can surface the strongest options without a long, meandering conversation. Second, embrace the idea of sketching. The next time you have an idea, don't just talk about it. Grab a piece of paper and try to draw it out. It doesn't have to be pretty. Just use boxes and words. The simple act of making an idea tangible will clarify your thinking and make it 1,000 times easier for others to understand. And finally, think about one big question you're facing. Something that feels stuck or uncertain. Ask yourself, what is the simplest facade I could build, in just a day, to get a real reaction from someone? It might be a mock-up of a website, a script for a difficult conversation, or a new layout for your room. The point is to create something you can interact with, something that moves the idea from your head into the world. That was a summary of Sprint by Jake Knapp, John Zeratsky, and Braden Kowitz. We've certainly hit the highlights today, but I'll be honest with you, a summary can only take you so far. The real magic happens when you hold the book in your hands and read it for yourself. It's in the quiet moments, when a particular story or a simple phrase hits you in a way you didn't expect. This summary is designed to help you decide if this book is worth your time and attention. If anything we've talked about today has sparked your curiosity or resonated with a challenge you're facing, I encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning a new process, it's an experience that can genuinely change the way you approach problems and bring your own ideas to life. You can find a link to the book in the description below. Also, if you found this journey valuable, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps us reach more curious minds like yours, and ensures you won't miss our next exploration into another life-changing book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Let's keep growing together.